Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Data Standard Audio Experience. Today we have Toma Kraft, the co-founder and senior VP of engineering at Stratified. And today we're speaking about trustworthy data. So welcome to the show, Toma. I'm excited to have you today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, definitely. Could you tell the audience more about your background and just introduce yourself, how you kind of got into the position where you are today?
Oh yeah, so I started off with an undergrad in computer science and an econ minor at St. Lawrence University back in 2012. From there, I actually kind of got introduced into research by doing RU, research experience for undergrad at UNCC. And then from there, I actually continued doing research with the advisor from that program and got started in my PhD program at UNCC at Charlotte, where I was part of the visualization center. So some of the things I was working on was knowledge-based systems and a focus on text event detection in text. So while I was doing research there, my advisor and another postdoc and I, we co-founded Stratified, and from that it kind of just took off. That started maybe about 6 years ago, and so from there we were just working on building a generalized analytics tool to help understand unstructured data. So yeah, and now here we are.
Yeah, super interesting stuff that you're working on right now too. And today the big topic is just about trusting data and how to kind of ensure this trust within the organization. And so trust is something that's often earned and it's not just given, in especially a lot of tech organizations as well. And it's a huge topic that a lot of past guests have also talked about on this podcast. And so in your opinion specifically, how do you kind of best ensure that the data is trustworthy within your organization?
Yeah, so I think for companies, the end goal is always, how do you make a smarter decision? And so in order to do that, you need to be able to quantify your options and figure out, what does this mean? And so that really starts at the data level. The data shows you what happened, and then you're doing your analytics and your data science on top of that to figure out why. But in order to have something that's concrete, you need to make sure that the data you're using is accurate. You need to make sure that it's complete, whether it's you have all your data fields all filled in, or if you are analyzing across multiple sources that you're collecting from all your different sources. It's also important to make sure that the data that's coming in is timely, so that if it's being updated, it's being updated pretty frequently. But with all that in mind, it all kind of starts at the beginning and making sure that you're documenting your process from the beginning of data collection. It's really important to know who is doing the collection, where your sources are coming from, which channels, how it's being cleaned, how often. All those things kind of tie together in providing you like trust in that data source. So if you are collecting yourself and you know all these steps, you feel better about what you're actually working with. But still, even with all that, it's still hard to trust data. I know, like starting out, it's really hard for us, like for at least me, to kind of make sure I felt it. So there's always like that verification step. So as you're kind of getting started, it's really important to make sure that you're verifying the sources. I always found it really nice when you're visualizing it, because it's really easy to kind of see if there's gaps, if you're visualizing over time, if you're visualizing over different dimensions, things just kind of pop out a little bit more. But nothing kind of really satisfies that urge, I guess. Like you always have something in the back of your mind. So it's always good, like whenever you have like a major event, to go back and look at your data and say, can you find any precursors in your data that points to this event. And if you can find that, that just proves that you have something that is collecting completely. Also, if you are looking through your data and you're just visualizing, you're saying, hey, I see a spike over here. What was this? If you're actually investigating those spikes and and pointing it back to real world events, if you can tie those anomalies to something real, that just boosts your confidence in what you're collecting and will give you more trust going forward.
And so when you have this trustworthy data, then people are able to kind of train these models and really work on it. But naturally, all raw data always has some sort of biases within it. And so how do you kind of deal with working with this biased data?
So I guess the first step is figuring out if you have a problem, just knowing if there is some sort of bias. So it's really just figuring out what your inputs are for your training, like whatever you're training with. If you're doing something that's semi-supervised or fully supervised, visualizing the outputs that are being used and making sure that you don't really have something that's skewed. You need to make sure that it's actually covered like realm. So if you're trying to predict something like a binary classifier, that it's equally distributed across of it. So I think the first starting point is just having metrics on top of what you're training with, so that way you can see if there is a problem, and if you have new data coming in as you're retraining, to make sure that there isn't drifts going in the wrong direction. And if you do know that there is some sort of bias, or if it's leaning one direction, it's really important to make sure that you're using the right model. Some models are better at others at handling this and this imbalance, and just making sure that you're taking that into account. Still, there's always issues. There's biases that are caused by people or by systems that inherently. So it's good to make sure that you have your results peer reviewed by your colleagues, or maybe have like a third party auditor to make sure that they are challenging your results, because this isn't an easy challenge. It really takes being diligent on looking at the results, visualizing the results, sure that if your model has explainability, being able to kind of show why it's making those decisions. So that way, if you have someone there, that they can actually go in and make corrections to that data, saying this wasn't right for this reason. If you have a system in place where you can correct it and then retrain with those corrections, it really helps at addressing if there might be some sort of bias. For me, I've always found that I've never really I prefer having a human in the loop more, because the computer is really good at finding patterns and like doing like the number crunching. But if you combine that with humans' domain knowledge to kind of have all that presented to you, it makes it a lot easier for the human to sort through the noise and pick out the patterns that are important.
Yeah, absolutely. And great insight and explanation there. And I also wanted to weave in the topic of AI in general. And AI is something that a lot of different organizations are trying to utilize, just because it's the hot new thing in data science, especially, that organizations are trying to use. But it's not always necessary to use super complicated and complex AI. And so in what situations, for simpler situations, would you need other tools other than AI?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where it's gotten a lot of attention. And so like, it's how do I use AI kind of thing. But the first question you need to ask is, do you actually have enough data to train the models? Do you have the right data to actually achieve whatever goals you're trying to hit? AI isn't magic, so it's really important that you focus on your outputs first and figure out what you're trying to achieve with your data, and then work your way back to what you actually need to support those outputs. It really is important that you have a business decision maker kind of inside the loop, also, so that way they can say, like, this is what will drive value, and if we have these things, then we can achieve it, and then work together on in getting there. But for me, I've always, coming from the visualization center, I kind of had instilled and that visual analytics is really powerful. So you don't necessarily need to have AI that has complex classifiers if you're just visualizing your data properly. What's really important there is making sure that you have interaction with your visualizations so that you can actually get back to the raw data. But if you are showing coordinated views for different dimensions of your data that kind of show holistically what's going on, and then you're letting the humans like perceive those small differences, because we're really good at seeing small size differences or color changes or just those minute things that you don't necessarily have to highlight just by having them compared side by side. The human can pick up on that. So just really leveraging the visualization and letting the human go from seeing these small differences and letting them investigate with interaction. If you're able to filter down on certain areas that you might think are interesting, you can see what is actually there, and then always being able to go back to the raw data from those visualizations that make up what you're looking at, just kind of solidifies what you're trying to get to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to also go back to the topic of data trust, and how do we kind of improve data trust within an organization when maybe that trust is already lost, or just initially, how do we kind of improve it or ensure that it's going to be built upon?
Oh yeah, that's another great one. I guess starting from like every level, whether you're collecting, whether you're analyzing or cleaning, or whether those results are being used to make a decision, it's important to ask each of those groups if they have any trust gaps. So figuring out if they might not trust the data that they're receiving, maybe it's not, they don't think it's complete enough, but figuring out where those gaps are and then figuring out how to address those gaps. So whether it's adding a new process in your cleaning, or having another data source added to it, or even just maybe it could just be an education issue. Maybe a team doesn't realize that there's a data source there, or what it is being collected within that data. It could be as simple as, oh, we need to have more education around our collection processes to kind of build that trust back up. And from there, it's really just about if I guess being data driven should start from the top up. So it's really important that everyone on the team understands what goals are trying to be achieved with the data initiatives. And if something is being measured, that you're sharing what you're measuring and those metrics with the broader team at large. So that way you're creating transparency with what you're actually trying to drive. And then if you're building metrics, it's really important that you provide in human language what those metrics are actually collecting, and what you can do, what you can use those metrics for, and also, just as importantly, what you can't use those metrics for. So yeah, and then from there, it's also important that you align your data tasks with responsibility. So if you have a team that you make, the data collection, they might have their own set of metrics that they're trying to hit. And if you can make sure that at each step they are self-contained and their responsibilities are focused, then each team can start to trust each other a little bit more, because their goal is cleaning the data, their goal is collecting the data, their goal is analyzing the data, their goal is using that data to make a decision. If you can create accountability at each point, it's easier for the teams to work together.
Yeah, definitely. I think accountability is so important within a team organization like this. And I wanted to say thank you so much, Toma, for all of your great insight today. I wanted to also talk about the data standard a bit. We're trying to build a community where everyone could just communicate, network with each other. And so, what is something the community could do for you?
So I guess it's, I'm not really sure exactly. I guess like I kind of get siloed away when I work a little bit too much, but I guess connecting on LinkedIn and just, improving data in general. So, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. And where can everyone find you online to connect?
LinkedIn is probably the best.
Yeah.
I think it's Toma Kraft is my username on LinkedIn.
Yeah, perfect. And to our audience, for more information on the data standard, you can find us at www.datastandard.io, as well as on our LinkedIn and YouTube channel. So thank you so much, Toma, for joining us. It was such a pleasure to have you today.
All right.